Now on Radio 4, it's time for The Choice, in which Michael Burke talks to Richard McCann, whose mother was the first victim of the Yorkshire Ripper.
Hello. Richard McCann was just 5 when his mother went out one night and never came home. Her name was Wilma McCann, and that night in October 1975, she became the first victim of the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe. Richard and his older sister Sonia, who was 7 at the time, went out looking for her across the fields and, unknowing, walked past the spot where their mother was lying dead. Sutcliffe was eventually convicted of murdering 13 women over 5 years. After a brief spell in a children's home, Richard and his 3 sisters went to live with their father, whom their mother had left because of his violence. After a difficult childhood, Richard went steadily off the rails, ending up in jail for drug dealing. His sister Sonia also had a traumatic life. Both at rock bottom, they made a desperate choice. They'd end it all together. Richard, how bad was it?
As bad as it can get, as far as I was concerned at the time. You know, it felt as though, for me, there was no way out. You know, I couldn't control my situation any longer, and it felt like, I guess, taking my life was taking back some control, and I just felt so, I guess, angry at life and those events that had happened throughout my life that, you know what, I thought to myself, yeah, I'm out of here.
Let's go right back. What do you remember of your mum and your early life?
On the whole, I do remember it being quite difficult at home. We had no money, we were on the at-risk register, my mum was always being beaten. But I've got some fond memories as well of my mum. For example, taking me to hospital when I'd cut myself on my forehead, and I sat on her knee waiting to be seen by the doctor. And so I've got a few nice memories like that. But
they're fleeting memories?
Yeah.
But warm ones?
Yeah.
You were only 5 when your mother was killed. What can you remember of that night?
Well, I remember the night being different because Angela was crying and my mum didn't come to her.
Angela was one of your youngest?
Yeah, she was 3 at the time, and she was like in the cot beside us. We shared a double bed, the 3 of us. And I just remember it being surreal. This is not quite right. Where is Mum? And hearing Sonia telling Angela this story in the bedroom, and then just finally, around 5:30, Sonia waking me up.
5:30 in the morning?
Yeah, and telling me that my mum hadn't come home, and that let's go look for her. And, you know, getting dressed and leaving the house, knowing that we shouldn't really be doing that, but because Mum wasn't there, what else could we do? And walking down that field at the back of the house, which Mum always told us to do, and being scared. Obviously it was pitch black and obviously silent, but, you know, feeling fear. That was the first time I actually felt fear. And just remembering sitting at that bus stop waiting for her to come off the bus, and, you know, as each bus came and went and she didn't appear, that fear that I felt, that worry, anxiety got worse.
I mean, it's a poignant image, a picture that you're painting of these 2 small children, 5 and 7, at the bus stop in the very early hours of the morning, watching bus after bus coming for their mother, and the mother never turns up. What was, I mean, apart from fear, what was going through your mind?
I had no idea that we'd never see her again, so I just wonder, when will we next see Mum? Will we be going to school? I guess normal thoughts, and, you know.
Your mum didn't come. What happened then?
Well, the police were at the house. You know, they're asking us when we last saw Mum, and then just being told to get dressed properly, because when we left the house we had our coats on over our pyjamas. It took us to the local children's home, which wasn't far, and I think once we got there, things started to kick in that this is serious. Although I have to say that I kind of thought that Mum would be there waiting for us.
Were you disappointed when she wasn't? Well, obviously you were disappointed. Were you heartbroken when she wasn't?
We see, devastated, because the officer said, your mum's been taken to heaven, you're not going to see her again. Those words, I thought, this has got to be wrong. And I remember praying for her to be brought back.
So when did it all start to sink in, as far as you were concerned?
At some point in that children's home, we knew my mum had been attacked, we believe by a man. I don't know who said that, but we just knew she'd been attacked by a man on the field at the back of the house. We didn't realise how she died. That came maybe 2 years later, once it became this massive media story. And what I discovered was that her killer, the Yorkshire Ripper, had stabbed her mum 14 times, and it hit her over the head twice with a hammer. Once I did know that, once that was part of my understanding of what happened to my mum, maybe as a kind of a defence mechanism, I pushed it to the back of in my mind, and I almost tried to imagine that wasn't my mum that happened to, that was just somebody else. And I think I still do that today.
But it must, even subconsciously, have been having some kind of effect on you. In what way did it overshadow your life?
First of all, I was fearful. I was petrified of this man. I was terrified it was going to kill me. I was walking around with that for years. I was convinced that he knows where we're living now, and I can remember being petrified at going into the kitchen on an evening and I imagined him appearing at the glass window and out in the back garden.
In what way did it overshadow your life?
I always thought that school friends, everybody else seemed to be better than me, more sorted than me. I felt like I was damaged goods. I mean, I wasn't stupid. I knew that the way that these women were being portrayed, they weren't, good people. And that did nothing for my self-esteem.
Were you able to talk to anybody about this?
No, we didn't. It was a taboo subject. Once, we started this new life with my dad and his girlfriend, it wasn't something we spoke about.
Because that's what happened to you, was it? I mean, you went to the children's home first of all, but then your dad, whom your mother had left because you'd been so violent, actually came and took you back.
Yeah, he kind of stepped in and we set up home with him.
I mean, what was it like living with him?
I just remember feeling a bit strange, but, I accepted that, okay, it's my dad, and we'll start again, start afresh. But we soon realised that my dad became a very violent man when he was drinking.
How violent could he be when he was drunk?
I remember him beating Sonia on one occasion at the bottom of the steps, and he came back into the living room, and he was panting as if he'd been in the boxing ring. And Sonia went on to tell me later that he'd kicked her, and, it could be very violent. The thing is, but it wasn't always like that, it was just in drink.
In 1981, Peter Sutcliffe was finally caught. How did you feel about it?
Well, I can remember it happening, and I can remember being relieved at last that this man had been caught, but also, it didn't matter to me. My mum was dead, even him being caught didn't change anything. Plus, I couldn't share it within the family. It was a taboo subject.
You didn't even talk about it?
No.
How were the rest of the family coping? How about Sonia?
She seemed to be going off the rails a little bit, or sticking up for herself, and in fact that was when she got her final beating by my dad, which, meant the NSPCC came to the house and took her away.
That must have been a blow for you.
It was.
Because she must have been a bit of a prop.
She was. She was the person that I looked up to, but she was taken away, and I missed her.
Did you start to go off the rails then?
I won't say I went off the rails for that reason. I was kind of going off the rails at the same age.
Doing the same sort of thing?
Doing the glue sniffing and the drinking. So by the time I actually got to 16, I decided I've had enough now. I'm old enough. Sonia had been given a flat by then, and I walked out of school, walked out of home and moved in with her.
How did that work out?
Okay to begin with, but it was a one-bedroom flat, and she was actually with her friend lived there as well, so it was a bit tight. But then we got into a bit of a fight, which is a bit sad really, but we got into a fight, and she kicked me out, and I walked back to my dad with my tail between my legs, and around that time his girlfriend left him, which was a bit difficult.
So you decided to join the army?
After a couple of dead-end jobs, I decided, well, it was one of the guys that I worked with decided, let's join the army. I went, yes, fresh start, let's start again. And I joined the Royal Artillery. Because of what had happened, because of the stigma that was attached to, I guess, Peter Sutcliffe and his victims, etc., I just couldn't tell anybody. I didn't want to tell anybody. I wanted to just be the same as them, so I said that she died in this car accident, and I got away with that. Went out to Germany, and it was okay, got myself a German girlfriend, and it was like I was on holiday, really. And then this magazine was brought back to the regiment. It was the murder case book. Peter Sutcliffe was in the first edition, and my mum's photograph was in there. Oh, I look a lot like my mum. And people were talking about it again. My sister Sonia, she's in the magazine. They just knew I looked like my mum. The McCann, Leeds, everything else, they all fitted together, and I couldn't deny it, And I had what I call a breakdown. I went crazy. I went crazy. I went round this village that I don't think has ever seen crime before, and I was just causing as much mayhem damage that I could and nicked a motorbike and damaging cars and fences. And I had this little twisted thought along the lines of, I'm going to leave my mark on society in a similar way to what he did, where everybody was talking about him when he was out there killing women. And I imagined them doing the same about me. And I basically found myself on the psychiatric ward of the military hospital. They labelled me as being a person with a personality disorder. And they sent me on my way, medically discharged me back to UK. But I just kind of shrugged it off and started again.
But you were back to square one in a sense. You'd tried this new start, you'd joined the army, entirely new world, you'd even gone abroad.
Yeah.
But here you were back in the UK again, back in the same place that you'd tried to leave before.
Well, I was. But what had happened, is out of my control. Let's start again. I moved in with Sonia, basically.
And what was life like? What did you...
I mean, it was fine. It was good. I love Sonia and I like being around her, and I lived with her for some time, for some months, and then I got myself a job and a place of my own.
But what was life like here? I mean, were you drinking? What about drugs?
I got myself a job, and the guys that I were working with were taking drugs every weekend. And I don't know, I remember this guy just saying to me, don't knock it till you've tried it. I thought, yes, I'll try it and show you that I don't need it. And that's what I did. And for me, having no confidence, at that point in my life, it was one of my nicest feelings I'd had.
What sort of drugs were you experimenting with?
Well, it started with speed, amphetamine, which that's what they were taking, and that's the first thing I took that night. Because I felt so good for those few hours, I were then going out every weekend with these guys, and speed would be ecstasy, cocaine, and that became more important than having a stable job. And I was phoning in sick, and then I got sacked. I ended up in hospital. A couple of friends died after taking drugs, and because I still wanted to go out with these guys every weekend, I became a petty drug dealer and started supplying them with their pills.
And then you got caught?
Well, I did get caught. I was arrested with 100 pills on me, ecstasy tablets, and then ended up in prison.
What happened to you?
I got a year to serve.
That was really quite lenient, wasn't it?
It was lenient.
Why, do you think? Again, because of the... did the
fact,
court hear about your background?
Well, they did.
And do you think it was because your mum was killed by the Yorkshire Ripper that you got 1 year rather than two, three?
Probably, yes.
What impact did prison have on you and your life? What was it like?
What was it like? Well, I mean, I'd bought a house by then, and I thought, that's it, I'm going to lose my house. I had a girlfriend, I'm going to lose my girlfriend, and I thought there wasn't going to be much of a future, criminal record, a drug dealer. But once again, I was lucky, because I remained in Leeds. I got a job on the hospital wing, so I was like serving some of the prisoners the food, and I could see my family, my girlfriend.
And your sister Sonia came to see you regularly?
Yeah.
And Sonia did at least help, didn't she, with the house, trying to keep the parents?
She's the only person that helped. Well, she paid some money, like £10 a month or something, just a token payment, to ensure I kept the house whilst I was in there.
But Sonia was there for you when you were in jail, and they're waiting for you when you came out?
She was. Bless her. With a can of Foster's and a tax rebate.
And a leopard print coat from Oxford.
She had a leopard skin coat from Oxford. It was great to see her. But then reality kicked in. I was in about £5,000 worth of debt. Most of that was the mortgage payments. I was taken to court, and the judge gave me 6 weeks to get a job. And that was difficult because you have to declare your conviction, and I did that, and people were saying to me, you're perfect, but we can't set you on because you've got a conviction. I felt badly done. I felt... About 5 weeks later, I gave up. I realised, there's nothing I can do here. I can't improve my situation. My house is...
Your house is going to be taken off you?
Yeah, I was so proud of owning that house. And by then, my girlfriend had left me. There was no way out. And then I decided to phone Sonia and, tell her how I was feeling. I just simply told her, I'm out of here. And, I knew she knew what I meant. You see, we'd often done this before. We'd often kind of reflected on what had happened and how bad a hand of cards we'd been dealt. We had this, like, almost ongoing joke. What else can happen in this family? Sonia would often say to me, and this felt another one of those. My house has been taken from me in a week's time. What else? It felt like the only bit of defence, the only thing I could do is take some control back by deciding I'm going to end it. And she said she would join me. And I think Sonia got quite keen about the idea and said, well, so how are we going to do it then? And I wanted her to slow down a little bit, because what I didn't want to do was do something that was going to cause us any pain. So I said, wait, just hold on, let's just think, or let me think about exactly what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. And that was it, we ended the conversation.
How serious were you about it, though?
Well, at the time, completely serious, you know. It felt as though there's nothing I can do, and I'm not going back to that. I'm not going back to living in a council flat getting robbed, but this time without any job. No one's going to want me, no one's going to date me. At the time, I was serious. What actually happened was I then went to my ex-girlfriends for one last plea for us to make a go of it. Whilst I was there, the phone went, and, you know, and it was Sonia, and she simply told me, you know, I'll never forget that, you know, Richard, I've taken my tablets, are you going to join me? So she was completely serious. She'd had that conversation with me, put the phone down, gone out and got drunk, and took her tablets. She didn't wait for me.
So, what went through your mind at that moment?
Complete, utter panic. The first thing I did was I rang the ambulance service, and I got them to go to Sonia's to get into hospital. Because she was drunk, what they had to do was take a blood sample and see whether or not it was serious or not, and depending on the result, they'd put her on a drip. She wouldn't wait for the results. She gave the blood and went, right, I'm going. So I thought, you leave this hospital, and your result turns out to suggest you need to go on this drip, well, then you're going to die. Well, it felt to me like a life or death situation, and, you know, there was no telling Sonia she wasn't going to stay there. You know, we got back to the house and started tidying up, and then they phoned and said, you better get back here. You know, it is serious. And finally, you know, she did decide to go into hospital, and we got her there. You know, she went through the procedure.
How did you manage to persuade her?
I was just pleading with her and telling her I loved her, and, you know, we won't see each other again. And
where did this leave you? I mean, there you were, 48 hours beforehand, saying, it's all over. I don't want any more of this. I'm out of here, you were saying to yourself. I want to commit suicide. She says, oh, yeah, I feel exactly the same way. Where does this leave your decision about what to do with your life?
As soon as I got that phone call from Sonia, it was a shock. It was a wake-up call, and I decided at that point, well, one, I'm not going to join her. I chose not to, and I just knew deep down that I wasn't going to kill myself. If I go back to a council house, flat, whatever, it doesn't matter, you know. Life is worth living, even if I can't get a job, you know. And all I was focusing on was looking after Sonia and ensuring that she didn't continue down that road.
What had changed, though? Because your situation hadn't at that time changed.
What had changed is the reality of one of us, either of us, both of us, taking our own lives suddenly hit me in the face by Sonia doing it. And that changed everything. That what have I done? What have I done? And I was ashamed. I'm ashamed now of that experience, that conversation, that decision. I'm ashamed of all that. Because I gave up. And not only did I give up, what I did, I gave her the idea to do it. What changed was she did it. I realised how stupid I was.
It was a desperate time. And a desperate time taking place how long after your mother was murdered?
22 years.
22 years. But did both of you think that it had been a straight line between the two events? That 48 hours in which you discussed a joint suicide, you'd come across the reality of your sister trying to commit suicide, there was a direct link between that and...
I can see that. But we didn't talk about that in that way after it happened. If Mum hadn't died in that way, we probably wouldn't have been talking about that. Mum would have been around anyway.
You emerged from this 48 hours of incredibly messy, incredibly upsetting, incredibly traumatic time, curiously feeling more positive. not as negative as you had been at the beginning. What about your sister? What happened to her?
She continued down that path of drinking.
Whereas you, well, nothing had changed over that 48-hour period, had it? I mean, you were still facing the loss of your house. Your girlfriend wouldn't come back to you. You still had a criminal record, which was making it difficult to get a job. How did life change for you?
Well, I just decided to keep trying. I mean, I had a week to go to get a job and come up with this repayment plan. And in that final week, I went for what was the last interview, last-ditched attempt at saving the house. And I decided to lie in the interview, and I got myself a job. I didn't say I'd been to prison. It were desperate times, and I saved the house at the last minute.
What sort of job was it?
It was assistant warehouse supervisor. I then went on to give my own department, in charge of all the imports from the Far East, and I did really well there. My salary nearly trebled, and you know, things were looking really good. And I actually got Sonia a job working with me to try and help her again. With her drinking, it didn't work out. And I changed my circle of friends. I moved away from these guys who I were going out taking the drugs with, and I took up salsa.
Salsa?
Salsa, well, me. And I started mixing with a more positive group of people. So my confidence began to change, and paid off my arrears early. Got myself some assertiveness training, got myself some counselling. But all the time, Sonia wasn't doing so well, but, you know, she got worse. Sometime after that, her daughter, who was 12, went to live with her grandmother because Sonia was drinking so much. And, you know, she continued with the violent partners. She was having more thoughts of suicide. I did my best to try and get her some counselling as well.
So how far now do you think you've turned your life around?
Oh, I can't believe where I'm at now in comparison to where I was in 97. I'm married. I've got a family of my own. I've got 2 wonderful children. I've got a lovely wife. And helping, I guess, in society. I've been a Samaritan volunteer who helped me in 1994. I've set up a support group for other families who've been bereaved through murder or manslaughter, and been working for the Youth Offending Service. I'm doing everything I can to completely leave that past behind.
You didn't move away from Sonia, then?
No, I didn't move away from Sonia. I mean, she's the closest person that I've ever had to me. Because I've been quite successful in my job and the other things that I've got involved in. All the time, I'd have to keep stepping back into Sonia's life. And it's almost like I had 2 hats to wear. I never gave up on Sonia, and I continued to get her, or tried to get her some help. In fact, she was in rehab a couple of years ago. I thought, that's it now. She's going to turn that corner like I did.
But she didn't.
No, she didn't. She finally gave up on the 18th of December. I'll never forget that morning where we lost her. She took her life. And I knew when my other sister found her. And she said, "Richard, you better come." And I said, where are you? She went, "I'm at Sonia's." And I said, "Is everything all right?" She went, "No." That was it. That's all I needed to hear. I knew. I was in the right state. And I just got in my car, and I shouldn't have drove early. I was screaming in the car, "Please, no." Then I got there, and, you know, the ambulance was there. And then I knew she would died. And I just said, "What's she done?" They said, "Oh, she's hung herself." Once they said those words, I knew that's it. She's gone. That was 7 months ago.
It's very difficult, listening to what you're saying, to get rid of that rather terribly poignant idea of the 5-year-old and the 7-year-old going out looking for their mother who'd been murdered by this killer. And it's somebody with whom you shared all the consequences of that. And I mean, you've built another life, but actually she was your life's companion for a lot of it.
She was. We went through everything together. We knew how each other thought. We were almost like just one person. She was an extension of me. We would sit and we'd have a conversation. We'd only say 3 words and we knew what the other person meant. We wouldn't even finish sentences. We were so close. For her not to be here and for her to do that, you know. She's in a better place. The pain is over, hopefully. She's with my mum, hopefully. It was her choice, I suppose, and she was the closest person that I've ever been to. And she's left a massive void space in my heart, and I miss her desperately, like any, I suppose, brother would, but...
You shared a background that I suppose made you both the way you were. You shared a moment of a choice in which you talked of taking your own lives. You went one direction, she went the other. She actually eventually followed through with that choice. You turned your back on it. What made the difference between you, do you think?
I just think she had the burden of being the eldest child. She felt responsible, and she often Mum would leave us with Sonia, so she was like a second mother almost. And so she felt that when Mum went, you know. I think that was the difference. She got a worse start than me. Sonia probably will not have done what she did had he not taken my mum's life. I just hate him for what he did. Arguably killed my sister as well. I know he hasn't done it. But if he hadn't have killed our mum, she wouldn't have done this. I don't.
What he did to your mother did lead you to the brink of that choice to end your own life, you and your sister. How glad are you now that you made the decisions about your lives that you did?
How glad? I don't know if I can put that into words. The thing I'm most glad about is that, not that I did that and turned my life around, that I have now gone on to have my own family, and I've created life, and, you know, I have my own children now, and a wife. I'm over the moon. I have to pinch myself because I chose not to do what Sonia eventually went on to do. Even though I'm overjoyed, it's still something that I'm ashamed, and that I actually came to that point. It kind of dampens down the joy that I might feel at this point in my life.
But then it was all part of it, isn't it? It hadn't been for the shock, and maybe you wouldn't have had the impetus to come out the way you did.
Yeah.
But it's a choice you please made now.
Yeah, it is. It is. It may have been that Sonia saved my life by deciding to act so suddenly that day.
Richard McCann, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The Choice was presented by Michael Burke and produced in Manchester by Dawn Bryan. And if you've been affected by any of the issues in this programme, you can call the Radio 4 Action line on 0800 044 044. There's all of the day's news in the world tonight next, but before that, time for a quick look at tomorrow's weather. Many inland parts will start dry with some sunshine. There'll be scattered showers over western coasts with more persistent rain expected over Wales and northern England during the afternoon. This is BBC Radio 4.
It's 10 o'clock. This is The World Tonight with Rithala Shah. The government has announced a package of measures to stimulate the
As bad as it can get, as far as I was concerned at the time, you know, it felt as though, for me, there was no way out. You know, I couldn't control my situation any longer, and it felt like, I guess, taking my life was taking back some control, and I just felt so, I guess, angry at life and those events that had happened throughout my life that, you know what, I thought to myself, yeah, I'm out of here.
Let's go right back. What do you remember of your mum and your early life?
On the whole, I do remember it being quite difficult at home. We had no money, we were on the at-risk register, my mum was always being beaten. But I've got some fond memories as well of my mum, for example, taking me to hospital when I'd cut myself on my forehead, and I sat on her knee waiting to be seen by the doctor. And so I've got a few nice memories like that. But
they're fleeting memories.
Yeah.
But warm ones.
Yeah.
You were only 5 when your mother was killed. What can you remember of that night?
Well, I remember the night being different because Angela was crying and my mum didn't come.
Now on Radio 4, it's time for The Choice, in which Michael Burke talks to Richard McCann, whose mother was the first victim of the Yorkshire Ripper.
Hello. Richard McCann was just 5 when his mother went out one night and never came home. Her name was Wilma McCann, and that night in October 1975, she became the first victim of the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe. Richard and his older sister Sonia, who was 7 at the time, went out looking for her across the fields, and, unknowing, walked past the spot where their mother was lying dead. Sutcliffe was eventually convicted of murdering 13 women over 5 years. After a brief spell in a children's home, Richard and his 3 sisters went to live with their father, whom their mother had left because of his violence. After a difficult childhood, Richard went steadily off the rails, ending up in jail for drug dealing. His sister Sonia also had a traumatic life. Both at rock bottom, they made a desperate choice. They'd end it all together. Richard, how bad was it?
To her.
Angela was one of your youngest.
Yeah, she was 3 at the time, and she was like in the cot beside us. We shared a double bed, the 3 of us. And I just remember it being surreal. This is not quite right. Where is Mum? And hearing Sonia telling Angela this story in the bedroom, and then just finally, around 5:30, Sonia waking me up.
5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and telling me that my mum hadn't come home, and that let's go look for her. And getting dressed and leaving the house, knowing that we shouldn't really be doing that, but because Mum wasn't there, what else could we do? And walking down that field at the back of the house, which Mum always told us to do, and being scared. Obviously it was pitch black and obviously silent, but feeling fear. That was the first time I actually felt fear. And just remembering sitting at that bus stop waiting for her to come off the bus, and as each bus came and went and she didn't appear, that fear that I felt, that worry, anxiety got worse.
I mean, it's a poignant image, a picture that you're painting of these 2 small children, 5 and 7, at the bus stop in the very early hours of the morning.
Mum had been attacked, we believe, by a man. I don't know who said that, but we just knew she'd been attacked by a man on the field at the back of the house. We didn't realise how she died. That came maybe 2 years later, once it became this massive media story. And what I discovered was that her killer, the Yorkshire Ripper, had stabbed Mum 14 times, and it hit her over the head twice with a hammer. Once I did know that, once that was part of my understanding of what happened to my mum, maybe as a kind of a defence mechanism, I pushed it to the back of my mind, and I almost tried to imagine that wasn't my mum that happened to, that was just somebody else. And I think I still do that today.
But it must, even subconsciously, have been having some kind of effect on you. In what way did it overshadow your life?
First of all, I was fearful. I was petrified of this man. I was terrified it was going to kill me. I was walking around with that for years. I was convinced that he knows where we're living now, and
watching bus after bus coming for their mother, and the mother never turns up. Apart from fear, what was going through your mind?
I had no idea that we'd never see her again, so I just wonder, when will we next see Mum? Will we be going to school? I guess normal thoughts, and,
Your mum didn't come. What happened then?
Well, the police were at the house. They're asking us when we last saw Mum. And then just being told to get dressed properly, because when we left the house we had our coats on over our pyjamas. It took us to the local children's home, which wasn't far. And I think once we got there, things started to kick in that this is serious. Although I have to say that I kind of thought that Mum would be there waiting for us.
Were you disappointed when she wasn't? Or obviously you were disappointed. Were you heartbroken when she wasn't?
We see, devastated, because the officer said, your mum's been taken to heaven, you're not going to see her again. Those words, I thought, this has got to be wrong. And I remember praying for her to be brought back.
So when did it all start to sink in, as far as you were concerned?
At some point in that children's home, we knew